Morning. Good morning. Please find a spot to make yourself comfortable. We want to welcome you all here today as we add our spirits, our body, and our activism to holding our nation accountable.
Oh.
Please find a comfortable spot. We want to get started. We have a very important program for you at a very important time, another important time in the history of our nation. We want to begin this morning, though, with a recognition of our ancestors and this land.
Sego, Aguigo. Patricia Tano Ikochpeshni Ichuwi Yonyats. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patricia, and we want to begin by recognizing that we're in Ohlone territory and that this is the sacred land of the Ohlone people. And so we send love and gratitude to the ancestors of this space and also to the Ohlone people living now who have shared their space with us. We are grateful for the opportunity to be welcomed as settlers into a space that has had a vibrant life and community for thousands and thousands of years, since time immemorial. And we also want to send love and gratitude to all of our relatives, the non-human relatives, all of these trees and plants and animals who live under the pressure of the toxins that are poured into this land all the time. And so we send them love and gratitude for maintaining as much beauty as they can. And we send love and gratitude to the relatives, the human relatives who live here and who live in sacrifice zones all over the world, who are on the front lines of the late stage capitalism and its impacts on us as a community. And so we begin with gratitude and love and courage, because as we move through this moment in history, like those who came before us, it will require courage and strength and compassion. And so we welcome all of those things today as we share this time together. And so, as Wilson said, we have a very tight schedule. And so we're going to begin by welcoming Marilia Kelly, who's the Executive Director of Tri-Valley Cares, who has been a researcher, writer, and facilitation for over 30 years. She has testified before the Livermore Lab and the U.S. Nuclear Weapons Complex. Marilia has testified before Congress and the California Legislature and the National Academy of Sciences. And she participated in this year's negotiations at the UN on the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. She was inducted into the Alameda County Women's Hall of Fame in 2002, and she lives here in this sacrifice zone and has since 1976.
Thank you. Welcome. Before I speak, one of our members who we share with Veterans for Peace is going to read a brief poem that he wrote.
Good morning. My name is Fred Norman. I'm with Tri-Valley Cares and Veterans for Peace, and I have an infamous distinction of actually being a navigator bombardier, whose job it was to drop these horrible devices, something I'm ashamed of. This is called Nagasaki Days. Every night I ask myself, what did I do today to eliminate nuclear weapons? If any night the answer back is nothing, then once again I revisit history. A face melts, eyes evaporate, skin slumps, slews, bones bleach white in smoking flesh, the living disappear, dead before death. Yesterday, a flash of supernova light, a roar of silence. Today, responsibility. Tomorrow, I cannot face tomorrow unless today I act to rectify the past.
Oh. Good morning. I'm going to read you a short quote that I believe is on your mind and your heart as it is on mine. This is our president, an unstable man, speaking from his New Jersey golf club, threatening North Korea with, quote, fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. My job today is to talk a little bit about why we are here, and I start with that. We are here today to commemorate the attack with nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and on Nagasaki, today being Nagasaki Day. We are here to stand with the survivors of that attack. We are here to mourn and commemorate the victims. But we are also here to speak truth to power at this place on this day. We are here to stop the next nuclear war before it starts, my friends. And we are here at this location because we understand if we are going to rid the world of the threat of nuclear war and even the likelihood at some point of nuclear war and the potential annihilation of life, we know the only way to address that threat is the total abolition of nuclear weapons. There are no right hands for wrong weapons. We are here today to take a step toward the global elimination of nuclear weapons. Thank you for being here, my friends. I want to say a couple of words about this ground on which we stand, this fence that we stand right next to, and what's going on inside the fence. Right now, and I mean now, today, U.S. weaponeers at Livermore Lab are busy designing a new warhead for a new long-range standoff weapon. Let me just say a couple sentences about what is a long-range standoff nuclear weapon. It is intended to be radar evading. It is intended to be able to be launched from thousands of miles from the target. It is intended to be a sneak nuclear attack, detonating on an unsuspecting population. And you want to hear, in light of what Trump said yesterday, what the Pentagon says, why they want this new weapon? It is to give a future United States president every option to use any kind of a nuclear weapon in a conflict situation. We are here to stop the development of the new warhead for the long-range standoff nuclear weapon. And by the way, these are Mach W80-4, which is the name of the warhead they're designing right now at Livermore. You are here with your presence, with your energy, with your spirit, with your bodies to say no to this. Livermore Lab right now this year is spending more than $1 billion on nuclear weapons activities. That budget is slated to actually go up next year. And if you have a moment and can carry a piece of paper with you, this is Livermore Lab's budget request for next year. I'll just tell you the blue is nuclear weapons activities, and the tiny slivers you can see is everything else, including non-proliferation, including a tiny sliver for actual science. We're here to change this completely. Thank you for being here today to be part of doing that. I want to pivot very briefly to something positive. We're here at a historical juncture where there is escalating nuclear danger, but there is also escalating pressure for global nuclear disarmament. Earlier this year, I was at the United Nations, as were some of the members of other groups here, at the negotiations on a treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. On July 7th of this year, that treaty was adopted. Do you want to hear the vote? 122 nations for, 1 abstention, 1 against. The overwhelming number of nations in the world say nuclear weapons are unacceptable, they are now illegal, and we must work toward their actual physical dismantlement and elimination. We will deliver this treaty, all 10 pages, to the lab. You can read it on the laboratory gates where it will be hung. We asked the lab director to meet us at the gates today. And the lab director replied, and I honestly appreciate that he responded. He replied that we should take our discussion to talk to the U.S. representatives at the UN, period. And I'm going to read 2 sentences because I'm over time, but I want to read 2 sentences from our response to his reply. By the way, I have extra copies of all this stuff on the table.
And it'll be on your website, right?
And it'll be on the website, yes. But I think it grounds us, so give me a second to find it here. No, we don't have time. We're over time. Here's what we wrote. We wrote that we do talk to our representatives at the United Nations, and we will continue to do so. But Livermore Lab is a proper and necessary forum to discuss nuclear disarmament in general and the implications of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in particular. Indeed, nuclear weapons activities that Livermore Lab conducts at its main site here in Livermore and at its Site 300 high explosives testing range near Tracy make it not merely an appropriate location, but an imperative location to have this discussion. With your bodies, you are forcing this discussion today. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Leah. We really appreciate Mayor Leah and her consistency, her focus, her intensity. It's what we all need. Let's take a moment in order to focus ourselves for this work. We want to commemorate the terrible dropping of the bomb. Let's take a moment of silence in order to focus and get deep in our intensity within ourselves. Let's take a moment. Good people, we have the honor this morning to hear from a survivor. Takashi Tanimori is a survivor of the 1945 atomic bombing of Hiroshima, which happened when he was 8 years old. Tanimori-san is a renowned artist, a writer, and a poet. His experience of losing both parents, 2 siblings, his eyesight, and overcoming hate is documented in Hiroshima Bridge to Forgiveness. Before he speaks, Elizabeth has a short word.
Good afternoon. Konnichiwa. I'm Elizabeth Weinberg with the Silkworm Peace Institute, and we'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to thank God for bringing all of us here today together. One thing I wanted to share is Takashi Tanimori, his family, the Tanimori family in Japan, his father once told him that Tanimori always gives from the heart. Tanimori gives out of abundance and also out of scarcity, but Tanimori always gives from the heart. And that, in essence, is Takashi Tanimori. There's a Japanese proverb, it's Nana Karobi Yaoki, which means fall 7 times and rise 8th. And that is also Takashi Tanimori, a man who's weathered the seasons and is here today to share with you a very special message. Having come from Japan to America as the #1 samurai son for revenge, and then finding forgiveness. We believe that forgiveness is the ground zero for global peace. So without further ado, I introduce to you Takashi Tanimori. Thank you. Arigato.
Thank you so much. And today, I see the sign behind me. We are marching for abolition of nuclear bomb. No nuke. Now, I'll be more than happy to share from my own personal experience of Hiroshima to tell you how we could abolish the nuclear bomb. And once for all, we are able to do it. And the next 10 minutes or so, I'd like to share with you that how we could abolish the nuclear bomb to create, shifting the world toward the peace. Now, I just want to just talk from my heart. It's not so much how terrible, horrific event took place on August 6, 1945. But I just want to share with you the process which I came to, I came to find out how we could abolish the nuclear bomb. Since I buried my father's on September 3rd, 1945. Just before he was taken from me, my father said, Takashi, I taught you many things, the code of samurai, how to live by. But I also lived my life before you. Takashi, would you please promise to your own heart that you will teach your children the things I taught you. And I want you to live your life before the children as I lived. It was when I was 8 years old, and he said, one last thing I'm going to ask you. Takashi, you know the greatest way to avenge your enemy is to learn to forgive. My father never repeated twice anything he had said to us. But this time he said, Takashi, may I repeat, the greatest way to avenge your enemy is to learn to forgive. And that was the last words he left to this number one son, Tanemori. Since then, took 40 long years of my struggles. And I was like many of you, an anti-nuclear, anti-nuclear. And we think if we abolish the nuclear bomb from the world, like mayor of the Nagasaki, Hiroshima, whom I met back in 1999, told me if we abolish them, we will stop the human suffering and also bring the peace. But that's back 1999, today 2017, the human suffering increased. And the fear of the nuclear war is just at the fingertip. It really is. The question is, as much as we desired abolishing the nuclear bomb, the anti-March, but somehow, somewhere, our efforts are not producing. Is that because anti-something that we against? So it took 40 long years my struggle. I came to two things. One, my father to teach Takashi, greatest way to avenge your enemy is to learn to forgive. Then secondly, I learned about instead the against anything that result from the conflict of our own heart. So why don't I shift that energy for something for? And unfortunately, nuclear bombs, just like a genie out of the bottles, we cannot put back. So question is, how can we deal with it? And that's what I'm gonna say. This, how I learned was teaching my father in 1985. I met, if I use that such a way, I came to place confronting the name of Jesus Christ, the who came, this word. Now, according to the gospel, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Then the book of Romans tells us, whosoever call upon the name of Jesus Christ shall be saved. So this morning as we're coming up and J.C. Orton gave us a ride, he mentioned several times while he was driving. He said, the love neighbors as thyself. The love. And I said, that's right. We need to love. And so there I was. I came to know Christ because God said he loved so much that he gave his own Son. If we are to accomplish abolishing the nuclear bomb, can we not love, use the love for the souls? How can we love to receive Christ as a personal Savior? That's how I was able to come to that term. Once I experienced freedom, once I experienced the divine forgiveness, then I said, wow, that's wonderful. For me, the best way to abolish the nuclear bomb, as J.C. Orton said, love. And the gentleman who sang the song, veteran gentleman, he sang and the poem. It is the love conquers all. So can we not find ourselves, experience the first? For you, I challenge you, if you have not considered, for God so loved the world, I'd like for you to consider, how can we experience that love? Energy can move forward, abolish the nuclear bomb by coming to know Christ as a personal Savior. That's how I was able to do it, and I want you to know that is the greatest way to find. And the divine forgiveness is the ground zero to shifting the whole world toward the peace. Well, I could say more, but I finish. All right. So, if there anything else,
Thank you.
thank you.
Right. Thank you, Tanamori-san. Much appreciated. Hiroshima Bridge to Forgiveness. I think you want to get that book. We have someone here in a wheelchair who needs the footrests put on it. We don't know how to do that. If there's anyone here who knows how to do that, if they could come up to the front, that would be very helpful. My friends, we're also honored today to have Barbara Rose Johnston come forward to speak to us. Barbara Rose Johnston is an award-winning anthropologist and senior research fellow at the Center for Political Ecology. She is affiliated member of the faculty at Michigan State and at UC Santa Cruz, exploring the intersections between environment, health, and human rights. She is an expert witness for the Marshall Islands Nuclear Claims Tribunal. She has a recent book, Consensual Damages of Nuclear War, the Rungelap Report, and Life and Death Matters, Human Rights, Environment, and Social Justice. Ms. Johnson.
I'd like to say that I'm glad to be here, but I'm not. I'm very, very sad to be here. I'm sad in part because I was asked to speak about the Marshall Islands, and we don't have Marshall Islanders standing here. Sad but true. Sad but true. Many of the people that I have worked with since 1998, intimately, since a decade even earlier, at a distance, are not with us. Average age of death in the Marshall Islands is 62. Look around. How many here are younger than 62? Right? It's quite a statement. It's quite a statement to say. So I'm sad. I'm very sad. But I'm also very happy to be here. The last time I stood before a gathering, we talked about nuclear issues and what does it mean and where are we going, was in the Marshall Islands, where we had Marshall Islands Nuclear Remembrance Day earlier this year. And it was an amazing experience. These are people who have hosted nuclear war. They can tell you inside out what nuclear war means, what the consequential damages are, because it's showing out in the first, second, third, fourth generations, and it will continue to show out for the next 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and then beyond. When you have population-wide exposures, when you host 67 atmospheric weapons and atomizing islands and detonating balloons, lagoons, you are permanently altered, profoundly altered, and that passes along through the generations. People here at the lab, this is a very appropriate place to gather. People here at the lab have been studying, and in part, the human health effects, in part, the thorny problems of what do we do with the most contaminated place that the U.S. has ever created? What do we do with Inuitak and the Runit Dome where the remains of many of the weapons that were tested in Inuitak Atoll were stored. Has anyone here heard of Runit Dome? Right? So when EPA was first created, one of the first tasks was how do we implement EPA, and one of the first thorny problems was what are we going to do in the Marshall Islands? It was a thorny problem because the Marshallese made it so, because of Marshallese activism and advocacy. And the solution at the time was temporary. It was too big of a problem. They figured at some point science will figure this out. And this temporary solution is still in place. It's still temporary. You have 3 to 4 inches of concrete covering Runit Dome on Inuitak, which concrete made out of radioactive reefs, out of coral, mixed with seawater, means that it's porous. Rain falls down, falls through the cracks, and underneath the dome is where much of the highly contaminated debris was dumped. That means ships, that means bunkers, that means remains of atomized soil, plants, and so forth, but especially the metals, all transformed under a 3 to 4 inch cap of cement that's porous. Water filtrates down into the lagoon, into the oceans. On the beaches of China, on the coast of China, you have the Runit signature. So this has been emanating for years. And there are people here who are studying and documenting and assisting the Marshallese in trying to figure out what to do. So I want to say this because we're standing here on this day when yet another American president promises the world to reign fire and fury, unlike the world, unleashing this onto the world. We've known this before, and we know what it will do. And as we stand here with a loud force of people who say, no, no more. So I'm happy to be here to articulate what I found when I went back last March to the Marshall Islands. I did not find people who were coward, who were depressed, who are, this is hopeless. They should be what you would find, what you would expect if you've suffered so much, if the obligations by the United States are persistently denied in Congress, at the United Nations. The assistance is minuscule. The little pie chart that was shown earlier of weapons and cleanup and assistance, it's a tiny little sliver that assists the most polluted place on the planet that the United States has created. But what I found was positive, immensely positive, because we are ocean people. This is the Marshallese approach and perspective. And the challenges of nuclear war and the challenges of climate change are one and the same. The Anthropocene really started at ground zero, and the Marshallese stand as ground zero in the face of both. And they are determined to say no, not for our generations, not for the futures that come. So I'm sad and sorry that Tony de Broom, one of the key characters in the Marshallese fabric of the last 60, 70 years, truly, cannot be here to talk to you. Because if he could, if he wasn't in his hospital bed, this is where he would be to say, no, not in our watch, no. If one man can go to the United Nations, can take 9 nations of the world to the International Court of Justice, can put these issues back on the level, if one man can push the climate change treaties to the point of coordinating and coming up with a coalition of high ambition, saying, and being recognized as the person who facilitated and got that treaty signed. If those two things, the ICJ lawsuits and the climate change treaty, come together, they come together in a patchwork that we need for the future. One man made a difference. One man, one woman, one child, we can all make a difference. And so the Marshallese story really has a lot to offer. Yes, you can learn a lot about the pain and the tragedy and the suffering. More importantly, you can learn a lot about where people are putting their priorities, and that individuals make a difference. Collectively, we can all make a difference. So Yokwe. Yokwe.
Thank you. I think that's a really important message for us to keep in mind, that the suffering is important to honor and recognize, and the resilience is the answer. The resilience is how we move forward. And so now we want to ask Jan Kirsch to come forward. Dr. Kirsch is a medical doctor specializing in internal medicine, medical oncology, and hematology. She's served as an investigator with the Northern California Childhood Leukemia Study of the UC Berkeley School of Public Health. And since 1983, she's worked with Physicians for Social Responsibility, speaking on nuclear war and environmental issues. Dr. Kirsch also trained with the Climate Reality Project and serves as coordinator of the 350 Bay Area Speakers Bureau. She's also the Bay Area chapter leader for climate mobilization. Dr. Kirsch, thank you.
So, I'm a medical doctor, hence the costume. My name really isn't Bob, though. I stand with Physicians for Social Responsibility and with tens of thousands, many tens of thousands of nurses, of doctors, of healthcare professionals and public health specialists around the world, standing up to the twin existential threats that we now face, and they are nuclear war and climate disruption. And make no mistake, these two are inextricably entwined, because when you have famine and you have drought, you make nuclear conflict far more likely. To talk about nuclear weapons, I like to start with what sounds like a prayer. We've already had a bit of a prayer today, or a couple, but it's not. Primum non nocere. And you Latin scholars know that that means first, do no harm. So it's also the motto of medicine. And what do you mean in nuclear war? What does it mean not to do harm? And it means this. You do not plan to fight a nuclear war, and you do not let people believe that it is possible, because it is suicidal and it is insane. You make sure that people understand that the idea of a preemptive strike, that the idea that deterrence will not fail, that the idea that a ballistic missile, a shield of some type could work, that these are insanity. And we, people like me, within the medical profession and the public health professions, say that we renounce all nuclear strategies, save one: ban the damn bombs. And so, back to the medical paradigm again, let me talk very quickly, and I trained in New York, so I can talk pretty quickly, or Mary Leah will pull the cane. And that is this, that if you talk about the acute effects of nuclear war, and we all know what those are, but if only, we're talking about a limited nuclear war. So let's say 100 Hiroshima-sized bombs, those are small bombs nowadays, are detonated. Then what would happen is that tens of millions of people around the world would die from the acute effects of heat blast and the immediate toxicity of radiation. That's more than died in World War II. When we talk about and then another semi or subacute effect would be that you would due to the soot and other debris from the explosions, you would be blocking out the sun and causing crop failures, especially grain failures around the world, the very staples that we depend upon, that the world depends upon, and a couple billion people would die within the next few years. So those are the acute, subacute effects. Let's talk about chronic effects. So I'm a cancer doctor, and of course this is a particular concern to me, because I would like to be, as a profession, extinct. Not as a species, but as a profession. When We all know that nuclear warfare is associated with the widespread dissemination, would be associated with the widespread dissemination of radionuclides, and these things have been shown to cause every type of cancer, save possibly one kind of leukemia, but every other type. And we cannot allow this to happen on a massive level. Then we have to think about what is the effect of actually having nuclear weapons. The more you have, the greater risk you're at. So, as Eric Schlosser details in his great book, 2014 book, Command and Control, that we basically have come so close to accidentally nuking our own country on multiple occasions. It has been sheer dumb luck that has prevented that from happening thus far. We've had bombs slipping out of aircraft, sliding out of submarines. I mean, they seem to be slippery little devils. We've had silos explode with not quite a detonation, but very nearly so. And this has been going on forever, since we've had nuclear weapons. And we have we have basically then releases of radionuclides. How many people have been killed when these broken arrows and other accidents happen? Nobody knows exactly, but through cancer and through the effects of radiation, we don't know how many we've lost. The best measurements have actually been done at the nuclear labs that have shown, in fact, that employees and others have died. So the more bombs you have, the more you create, the more likely you are to kill yourself. Now last thing, let's talk about money. And we've got $1 trillion allocated and more, as Marilia had indicated, for nuclear weapons within the next 30 years. That's $4 million an hour. What else might we be able to do with that kind of money? Okay, we talked about climate change, which is occurring more abruptly than has been predicted. And I think we can all recognize that. And wouldn't it be a magnificent thing if we could mobilize money and minds to get to carbon neutrality within several years, not several decades? Can anyone here imagine a peaceful Manhattan Project where, along with the renewables, wherein one actually develops safe and effective and widespread ways to draw down carbon and protect us from that?
Oh.
That could happen. Anybody here interested in a well-funded single-payer healthcare system? I sure as hell am. And so these are the things we should be spending our money on, not on weapons who can only be used to usher in the last day of civilization. So I stand before you, costumes aside, we're all doctors of destiny now, and what you do today matters, and what you say, it all matters, because we can and we must heal ourselves.
Oh.
And I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Is anybody feeling inspired? Yeah. This is very powerful to know that we have enough wisdom to do what needs to be done to turn things around. We need to inform and educate our leaders, quote unquote leaders. So, how many of you have seen the signature or the bumper sticker or something that says, if your revolution doesn't have dancing, I'm not interested? So this is the time in our morning where we get to dance and celebrate together with Emma's Revolution. Emma's Revolution is the award-winning activist power duo of Pat Humphries and Sandy O, whose songs have been sung for the Dalai Lama, praised by Pete Seeger, and covered by Holly Near. With beautiful harmonies and genre-defying eclecticism, Emma's Revolution delivers the energy and strength of their convictions in an uprising of truth and hope for these tumultuous times. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here this morning. I guess we'll start out with the danceable tune. It's not exactly the danceable moment, but as our wonderful physician spoke to us and said, we know we need our energy and hope to keep doing the work and be inspired to take action.
All right.
So this is a song we wrote when we were singing in front of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. to encourage them to do something about climate change. And we sang it again at a demonstration where there was a link and people started to make that link between ending war and ending climate change, because we know that the military-industrial complex, of which this laboratory represents such a big and dangerous part of, is the biggest polluter on this planet. And when we talk about renewables and they talk about nukes, we know that that's not going to work. What had been for 11,000 years, ancient ice and snow is melting like 11,000 tears down the face of Kilimanjaro,
where time itself is frozen, suspended in the air. Now the water flows on Kilimanjaro, damaging the essence of our atmosphere, threatens our existence. Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro,
where the oceans meet the rivers and the bays, watch their waters rise, reclaiming what were dry lands yesterday, right before our eyes.
from Tuvalu to Tonga, the shores of New Orleans, Venice to Jamaica, Kilimanjaro, from the South Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, flooding from the tears of Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro.
What will be in 11,000 years? Will we be at all? Will humans have realized our fears, or will we heed this call? We have burned our image on the open sky, squandering our privilege. Kilimanjaro, glacial ice is falling, corporations lie, covering and stalling. Kilimanjaro, but we have seen you crying, we can finally hear what we've been denying. Kilimanjaro, we can stop the yearning, we can stop the tears. We are finally learning, we are finally learning, we are finally learning. Oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro. Sing with us. Oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, oh, oh, Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro,
Kilimanjaro,
Kilimanjaro. so much. This song was written decades ago. It's a poem by a Turkish poet, Nazim Hikmet Ran. English translation by Jeanette Turner, and the music by a man named James Walter. And unfortunately, this message, we need it this morning. This is the message that needs to go to Donald Trump. This little girl is standing at the doorway of the White House, but he doesn't know it. And we're the ones to bring the message. We are the only ones to bring the message of this little girl whose message has been sung for decades, since activists already knew as soon as it happened that nuclear weapons and nuclear war had consequences that we all should be against.
Pete Seeger actually put all these pieces together and carried this song with him around the country. Pete was a very dear friend of ours, and if he were still with us on this planet, I'm sure he would be with us here if it were at all possible. So we wanted to bring him here today.
I come and stand at every door, but none can hear my silent tread. I knock and yet remain unseen. For I am dead, for I am dead. I'm only 7, although I died. Hiroshima, so long ago. I'm 7 now, as I was then. When children die, they do not grow. My hair was scorched by swirling flame. My eyes grew dim, my eyes grew blind. Death came and turned my bones to dust, and that was scattered by the wind. I need no fruit, I need no rice, I need no sweets, nor even bread. I asked for nothing for myself, for I am dead, for I am dead. Ooh. peace. You fight today, you fight today, so that the children of this world may live and grow and laugh and play. All that I ask is that for peace, you fight today, you fight today, so that the children of this world may live and grow and laugh and play. Thanks so much. We want to do one more song singing with you. It's a song we wrote when we were moving from the New York City area to the Washington, D.C. area. Happened to be over September 11th. We've sung this song with you all at many, many demonstrations, and we know the song has traveled around the world, both with and without us. We live out here now, so we're glad to be nearer to be able to make it out to you this morning.
We were asked to sing this song at the first peace rally in New York City after September 11th. And we saw that the writing was on the wall, literally and figuratively. We saw how the flags went up on every car, on every business. We saw the wanted posters. We saw the Nuke Bin Laden graffiti on the overpasses of the highway between Washington and New York City. So when they asked us to wear white as an international symbol of peace, we felt like it wasn't sufficient. So we wrote these words with a black Sharpie onto our white shirts. Peace in Arabic, salam. Peace in Hebrew, shalom. And peace in English. 10,000 people in the streets of New York sang the song with us that day. And as many people asked us about the shirt as asked us about the song. And it became clear to us that if we were to print these words on a shirt, we could identify one another, especially in those incredibly tense times. And we are in similar times now where we need to see one another. We need to see the people who stand behind these values. And we need to join with one another to push back against this outrageous administration. So please sing with us. And we'll begin the pushback this morning. Excuse my cold. You have to sing a little louder for me. Here's your part. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom.
That's your part.
Peace, salam, shalom. 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 Peace, salam, shalom.
Keep that part
we
going.
believe in peace.
Salam, shalom.
We believe in
Peace, salam, shalom.
We believe in peace.
Salam, shalom.
We believe in peace.
Salam, shalom.
We will work for 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 peace.
Salam, shalom.
Jerusalem, Ramallah, in Tel Aviv, in Washington, in Gaza City, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, in Tripoli. We believe in peace. 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 Salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom. Peace, salam shalom.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. We want to make a short announcement. Refuse Fascism is doing a die-in San Francisco at 5 o'clock today in order to respond to Trump. So those of you who on Mark Powell and Market. So is that right, Market? Powell and Market. So please come and let other folks know. Now it's our pleasure to hear from Christine Hong. Christine is an assistant professor at UC Santa Cruz, where she specializes in transnational Asian American Korean diaspora and the critical Pacific Rim studies. She is a co-editor of the Critical Asian Studies Special Edition on North Korean human rights. She is a member of the National Campaign to End the Korean War, the Alliance of Scholars Concerned About Korea, and the Working Group on Peace and Demilitarism in Asia and the Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. When I was asked to speak at today's rally, I hesitated, I'll be honest. Because I have a baby who hates long drives. But what propelled me was the terrible urgency of the present crisis and the absolute necessity for those of us in the anti-nukes, anti-war, and social justice movements in the United States to mobilize en masse in this moment for peace, to push for peace. And so to that beautiful song that was sung earlier, peace, shalom, salam, also Pyeonghwa. Pyeonghwa is peace in Korean. Many of you who have fought for a world without nukes understand that the horror of the atomic bombings in Hiroshima, of the atomic bombings of civilian populations at Hiroshima and Nagasaki amount to a terrible stain on the American conscience. Some of you came of age during the era of the brutal American war in Vietnam, and you recall firsthand how youth and conscience-stricken people converged in protest, making that era a watershed moment in the peace movement. In more recent decades, some of you may have taken part in anti-war protests, raising your voices in the lead-up to the unconscionable war in Iraq. These have all been signature moments in the American peace movement. By contrast, North Korea, a country that knows more intimately than almost any other on this earth what it means to be in the crosshairs of the U.S. war machine, and that the United States has threatened with nuclear annihilation on multiple occasions, has hardly occasioned any organized grassroots action. North Korea doesn't weigh on the conscience of the American public, but it should. Most Americans have no sense of how intimately the crisis with North Korea is shaped by the ugly and reckless adventurism of American warmongering and the overwhelming disregard that most Americans demonstrate when the deaths of others as a result of our brutal foreign policy occurs far from our shores. North Korea comes to us in media portraits, not in its complex truth, but as a simultaneously cartoonish and demonized portrait that is filtered through a fog of war. so shrouded in jingoistic rhetoric that too many of us, not necessarily us here, but too many in this country, consent to its apocalyptic destruction in advance. When asked this past spring to ponder in real terms what it would mean if Trump were to authorize a nuclear strike against North Korea, Senator Lindsey Graham stated, "Yes, it would be terrible, but the war would be over there. It wouldn't be over here. It would be bad for the Korean Peninsula. It'd be bad for China. It'd be bad for Japan. It would be bad for South Korea. It would be the end of North Korea. But what it would not do is hit America." This is the complete ignorance of someone who doesn't understand the impact of nuclear weaponry today. Yesterday, we were subjected to Trump's reckless challenge to North Korea, the most terrifying yet that we've seen from his administration. What he stated was that if North Korea continues to make threats, so in other words, speech acts, if North Korea continues to make speech acts against the United States, and he's appearing to draw a red line here, that it will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. Given that his words fall around the anniversary of the atomic apocalypse the United States visited on Japan, we are again reminded that the policymakers in Washington are afflicted with what Chalmers Johnson described as the amnesia of imperial powers. We don't recall that at the root of the present crisis is the Korean War, a brutal, dirty, and unresolved war that's never been resolved with a peace treaty. A war that's ironically known in this country for being forgotten, but that set a paradigm for subsequent U.S. wars of intervention to follow. Few in the mid-20th century, during a time of McCarthyism, registered opposition to the Korean War. There were exceptions. Paul Robeson was one. In a critique of what he called American armed adventure in Korea that resonates to this day, he lambasted his fellow citizens' meek conformity with the policies of the war-minded, the racists, the rich. Robeson unflinchingly observed that the maw of war makers was insatiable in Korea. Oh, Hannah, I hear you. Yeah. In an asymmetrical conflict in which the United States monopolized the skies, raining down ruin down from on high, 4 million Koreans, the vast majority civilians, were killed. Chinese statistics, and I want this to sink in, indicate that North Korea lost an unimaginable 30% of its population. Civilian infrastructure was not spared. Dams, schools, any standing structure was deemed to be fair game, and American bombers indeed complained that there was nothing left to bomb. As the historian Bruce Cummings notes, it was during this period that North Koreans, whom he describes as the party of memory, learned how to live below ground. 3 days into the war, Truman slapped a set of punitive sanctions against North Korea, and these were not an alternative to war. They were an explicit part of his war policy. North Korea, to this day, remains the most heavily sanctioned nation on this earth. Against the conditions of the 1953 Armistice Agreement, the United States maintains roughly 30,000 forces and about 100 military installations south of the DMZ. For the entirety of its existence, and I want to underscore this, North Korea has been subjected to a regime change policy from the United States. Back in the day, they called it rollback, right? And let's also remember that in keeping with the conditions of the Armistice Agreement, China withdrew its forces. Just as most Americans don't register that the United States test launched a Minuteman III ICBM from Vandenberg last week in a show of force aimed at North Korea. And although this was timed in response to the North Korean second ICBM launch, this is something that is routine. And let's recall that in terms of the proliferation of the military-industrial complex, North Korea has functioned as a very convenient ruse, even though what the United States has achieved through its anti-North Korea policy is the encirclement of China. China is nobody's fool. It knows who the real target of the United States is. So just as most Americans don't register that Minuteman III was test launched from Vandenberg, so too do most Americans not know that at mid-century, General MacArthur contemplated dropping between 30 and 50 atomic bombs strung across the neck of Manchuria in order to create a zone of cobalt where no one could live for approximately 100 years, thus making impossible a Chinese advance from the north. The United States has threatened North Korea with nuclear annihilation on at least a dozen occasions. When North Korea captured the crew of the Pueblo in the late 60s, when Colin Powell threatened to turn North Korea into a charcoal briquette, when North Korea was added to the list of permissible preemptive targets in the 2002 Nuclear Posture Review in the George W. Bush Axis of Evil era, when Obama announced that he was sending 2 stealth bombers to drop dummy nuclear munitions off the Korean peninsula in a simulated preemptive nuclear strike against North Korea, when Trump administrations repeatedly declared that all options are on the table, and when the United States, against the terms of the Armistice Agreement, housed nuclear weapons in the southern part of the peninsula. These conditions are at the structural root of North Korea's proliferation. In this time of unprecedented danger, we have to be ruthless, not in our threats, but in our pursuit of truth. Courageous, not with our swords, but in our willingness to confront our own historical denial. We have to recognize that North Korea does not require further U.S. intervention. So the question before us today is, what does a genuine peace with North Korea mean? Unsurprisingly, few media outlets have reported on North Korea's overtures to the United States. And I'll say that when it comes to North Korea, the media is truly fake news, okay? But these overtures, if pursued, might result in meaningful de-escalation on both sides. And this is to say that there are peaceful alternatives at hand. Far from being an intractable foe, North Korea has repeatedly asked the United States to sign a peace treaty that would bring the Korean War to a long overdue end. It has also proposed that the United States cease its annual war games with South Korea. And these are games that rehearse the simulated invasion and occupation of North Korea, perform the decapitation of its leadership, and also rehearse a preemptive nuclear strike. Can we imagine if the United States would put up with this and say it's business as usual if Russia and Cuba were to do this? Would they say it's not provocative? In return, and this is what North Korea also says, they have said war is not a game. Okay. In return, North Korea has offered to cap its nuclear testing. Okay, a suspension of provocative war games that are the largest in the world for a suspension of nuclear testing, thus de-escalating the current situation. China and Russia have reiterated this proposal. And so I want to say, in the middle part of the 20th century, too many Americans were silent. We cannot and we must not be silent now.
Okay. What a treasure trove of information. And it reminds me that this way of being that the United States is displaying now is who we are. From the very beginning of the founding of this country as a country on land that already belonged to somebody else, using stolen labor from a different continent, we started this country with no regard for other peoples. And so the thing that gives me hope and strength is that also from the very beginning, there's been a weaving of resistance, a weaving of understanding that this is not who we are called to be. And so we want to invite now to the stage Daniel Ellsberg, who has been a significant part of that thread of resistance. Daniel is best known as the whistleblower who released the Pentagon Papers and was sentenced to 109 years in prison before his conviction was overturned. He's been an analyst at Rand Corporation and consultant to the Defense Department, specializing in problems of command and control of nuclear weapons, war plans, and crisis decision making. Do we need that? He's working on his memoirs, America's Doomsday Machine, Confessions of a Nuclear War Planner. Welcome, Daniel.
Well, after that very informative talk on North Korea, can you hear me? Some reassuring words from our Secretary of State from Exxon, Rex Tillerson, from Guam this morning. I think Americans should sleep well at night. Have no concerns about this particular rhetoric of the last few days. In other words, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, Oz the Magnificent. I'm old enough, and it's just possible there's some other people here who are old enough. I'm 86. How many people here are older than that? Okay. You may remember then. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I was 14 when I heard the origins of that rhetoric we heard from Trump yesterday. Fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen. Actually, those words are kind of a Nazi threat. They could have come from Joseph Goebbels, but actually they didn't. Or Goering. I heard that when I was 14, as a few of you did, in a very straightforward Midwestern twang from our President Harry Truman, who, speaking after Hiroshima, was threatening a reign of ruin, the likes of which the world has never seen, on Japan. Interesting to know whether Trump realized here, or his speechwriter, whoever was echoing those exact words. And strictly speaking, that was, of course, a nuclear threat against, as it happens, a country that didn't have nuclear weapons. And we continued to make those threats for the next 5 years, really, against countries that didn't have any nuclear weapons until Russia acquired some. Actually, Japan had seen fire and ruin, a reign of ruin, pretty much the same as was about to come to Nagasaki on this day 72 years ago. The firebombing of Tokyo killed 80 to 120,000 people in one night, burned them to death with napalm, phosphorus, other facts, and proceeded to hit the next 67 Japanese cities in turn before Hiroshima. So they knew fire and ruin by that time. And I won't go into the whole story, but actually the atom bomb that was supposed to be the all-powerful weapon was neither necessary nor sufficient to end that war at that point, had we not been willing to announce, or hinted, I should say, our willingness to keep the emperor. There's no reason to think that the next 10 atom bombs would have brought surrender. And on the other hand, if they had made that offer, as many U.S. officials had proposed, that we were able to keep the emperor, which we wanted to do, to rule through him, the war could have been ended well before August at that time. So this notion that the American people have lived with ever since, of this all-powerful weapon that conveys godlike power on us, has been based essentially on a hoax ever since, but not a hoax of a willingness to kill. We'd shown that already in Japan. 5 years later, in North Korea, Rosie O'Donnell dropped the bomb. General O'Donnell, who had been on the Tokyo fire raid under General LeMay, announced, as head of the Pacific Air Forces at that point, that we had burned to the ground every structure of mankind in North Korea. Nothing was left standing. So they know fire and ruin. But there is a new scale, and there has been for the last 72 years. Not really for 72 years. More like 62 years. And let's see, since about 54, not 45. And what I'm referring to is this. Scientists who had been in on the beginning of the Manhattan Project, or even proposed it from the beginning, like Leo Szilard, who wrote the letter that Einstein sent to Roosevelt, actually, in 1939. Szilard didn't want that bomb dropped on Nagasaki, not because, or Hiroshima. He didn't even want it tested at Trinity in July, not because it would kill more people than we had already been killing. It wouldn't. Oppenheimer and the others assumed that it might kill 20,000. Well, actually, it killed more than that, but not as many as at Tokyo. There was, in fact, no decision to be made of a moral kind or a political kind by Truman. The supposed agonizing, anguishing decision they made to drop the bomb was no decision at all. We'd been killing as many Japanese civilians as we could every night for 5 months. The atom bomb was no turning point on that. But it was a turning point on something else. Szilard and the others knew that what would be coming was not only atom bombs that were 2 or 3 times as powerful as Hiroshima or Nagasaki with fission bombs, but the H-bomb, super secret, was on the way, for which the Nagasaki bomb, the plutonium implosion bomb that destroyed Nagasaki, would be the trigger, the necessary detonator for an H-bomb, of which the first droppable bomb in 1954 was 1,000 times more powerful than Nagasaki. 15 million tons of TNT equivalent compared to 15,000 tons for Hiroshima, which was compared to the roughly 15 tons of the largest blockbusters in World War II, called blockbusters because they destroyed about a city block with 15 or 20 tons of TNT. Hiroshima, 15,000. Castle Bravo test in 1954, 15 million. That was coming. So those of you, and we've all seen the pictures of Nagasaki, or even more of Hiroshima after the bomb, are seeing a picture of a city that looks very much like Tokyo after the night of March 4th, 5th, 1945, 5 months later, pretty much the same. Victims the same, crimes the same. But Nagasaki city, you're seeing what happens to a city when we drop the trigger to a modern thermonuclear weapon, the detonator, the detonating cap. That's what you're seeing. So it's a totally different level of fire and fury in terms of scale, and in terms of the fallout, in terms of the nuclear winter and everything else. Now, some of you, I'm very happy to see there are people here who are with me at Rocky Flats Nuclear Weapons Production Facility, where they made all the plutonium triggers for our H-bombs. And keep in mind, at one point we had 37,000 nuclear weapons, most of them H-bombs. Now we have about 10,000 on the shelf, several thousand alert, hair trigger, about 4,000 operational supposedly of these bombs, which are, as they say, many times that of Hiroshima. With the triggers, nearly all of the current ones made at Rocky Flats. Actually, Marion Daub just came up to me here. Wonderful to see her. When she was 17 in 1978, she and her mother stopped the train going into Rocky Flats, sitting on the tracks at night with the taking out the nuclear radioactive waste from Rocky Flats, without which, taking out, they would have had to stop. And by the way, Rocky Flats eventually was closed down for its pollution of the countryside forever, essentially, by a runaway grand jury that got the FBI to go in and raid it and discover what was coming on. I also see Father Louis Vitale, as always, with whom I sat at the entrance to the nuclear weapons testing range at Nevada for the first time, and others, many others who are here. In fact, how many people here have I had the honor of being arrested with? Oh, hi, everybody. Good to see you again. That's why I like days like this. And I remember at Nagasaki Day, 39 years ago, 1978. Nagasaki Day, we were sitting on the tracks and we were shutting it down at the entrance. And people asked then, why are you doing this? You know, you don't stop. They'd ask that on the tracks. You know, you stop the arms track for a day, let's say, but you know, that doesn't stop their making the bombs and so forth. And the message was that a few of us cannot stop it, cannot stop the arms race, but the American people as a whole can and must do that. And that's what we're demanding. The threats that Trump was making the other day, the words and the music was a little different, but the sense is the same, has been the same for 70 years. First use nuclear threats by every president we've had since Harry Truman. And in the last election, we had Trump saying, yes, I wouldn't take it off the table, but he was just echoing what Bush had said before him, and Obama, and Edwards, and all the Republicans that all say, not off the table, never off the table. The truth is, the American people need to tell this president and Congress and the media, the U.S. has no nuclear first use option on the table. That is not an option. That is a crime against humanity. It is a preparation, a rehearsal for the destruction of life on Earth. There is no first use option. And when it comes to just making the weapons, I'm sure there are people who there today who will see us sitting there or getting arrested, whatever, who are working there and thinking, why? We're doing deterrence here. What's the problem here? You know, we're patriots and so forth. And the answer has to be the same as at Rocky Flats. When they asked me 39 years ago on this day, why are you doing this? And that we said, there shouldn't be business as usual designing weapons, plutonium-type weapons of the kind that destroyed Nagasaki and are now triggers, on Nagasaki Day without having to arrest Americans to do it. You're going to do it over our bodies on this day, and that's what we're saying today. Thank you for being here.
about the program coming up here in the gates. Momentarily, Chizu Hamada from No Nukes Action Committee committee and her friends who are Japanese and Japanese Americans will lead us in an Oban dance. And I want to leave it to Chizu to come and explain the meaning of the Oban dance. But you are welcome and even encouraged to try to follow and to be part of the circle here in the gates and do the dance. After the dance, we are very fortunate that Emma's Revolution is going to stay and play some more music for us. There will also be a die-in where you will have the opportunity to have someone chalk your body. This is reminiscent. You've seen the pictures of the vaporized shadows of the victims at Hiroshima and Nagasaki today. Today is Nagasaki Day, and we will honor the victims in that way, and you are invited. At some point, the laboratory will come out and will ask people to disperse. That is the point where you will have the choice to come back to the curb or not, to stay in your shadow or to go to the gate if you wish to risk arrest. I want to point out one feature of the gate. What you are looking at, those pages, those are the 10 pages of the just adopted Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. 122 states parties at the United Nations on July 7th adopted this treaty. The vote was 122, one abstention, one opposed. The majority of the world's countries are saying unequivocally that nuclear weapons are illegal and they are unacceptable. We have delivered this treaty to the gates, and we invite you to either give legal witness or to risk arrest symbolically for the goals of that treaty, the complete abolition of nuclear weapons. Let me turn this over to Chizu.
Konnichiwa. We wanna dance bone dance. The bone dance is we think that the ancestral spirit come down to the earth, and then we have good time together, and then they go back to heaven. This time we will invite, and we want Hiroshima, Nagasaki, those victims, come down here with us, and let's have a little good time. So, I'm gonna, let's see, when we dance, we like to make this circle here, huge circle, and then this dance is for the actually coal miners, laborers song dance. So, this is the coal miners, so let's have a shovel. We have a shovel and dip twice in the right hand side, and then you have one right foot, one step forward. So dig, then left, dig, and then carry that shovel in the shoulder from the. How big a circle are we envisaging? Right hand shoulder, and the left side. Right foot, one step forward. Carry it. Left foot, carry it. Then, right. Now, after the evening, all the hard labor is over. The beautiful blue moon in the sky. So we want to see the blue moon and flip right hand up and left backward one step. We need to see the moon. And left, see the moon. Then we push the car. Push the it, carry it. See the moon, see the moon. Push that hard, then finish. So let's make a big sample. You will participate. Thank you.
Also, I've been asked to announce that some folks who want to, who are going to be risking arrest and want to discuss can meet over here.
Okay, brother. The only way it's gonna work, baby, right?
Did you enjoy doing a dance? I think Emma Goldman would have enjoyed dancing to that one too. A beautiful, powerful vision, the way to be with our people, our family, our ancestors who were killed in those horrible days, and be able to enjoy time with them and send them back up. So sing with us or dance with us. Let's get our energy up so that we're ready to stare them down. They're there, I see them.
Those of you who are chilly, just move around a little with this one. Just bringing a little bit of Lee Hayes and Pete Seeger to the streets again. Sing any version you know. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out teachers
Did you notice how we did that? It used to be brothers, and then that song got changed to brothers and sisters because women are on the planet, right? Are we here, women? Are we here this year in 2017? Are we here to shut down this ridiculous administration? Are we here to shut down this laboratory of death? All right, so it used to be brothers and sisters. But now we know that gender is a little more fluid than that. So now we say, all of the resistors! If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out warning, I'd ring out love between all of the resistors, all over this land. If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out love between all of the resistors, all over this land. Now I got a hammer, and I got a bell, and I got a song to sing all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, it's a song of love between all of the resistors, all over this land. Now I got a hammer, and I got a bell, and I got a song to sing all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, it's a song of love between all of the resistors, all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, it's a song of love between all of the resistors, all over this land. I think they're hearing you in there. We have sung with you all outside of some very important places. They're important because they think they're more important than we are. And they're not. Right? We've sung with you all outside the White House. Is the White House more important than us? No. We've sung with you outside the Pentagon. Is the Pentagon more important than us? No. We've sung with you outside of Sheriff Joe Arpaio's tent city. Is Sheriff Joe more important than us? No. We've sung with you all outside the School of the Americas in Georgia. Is that School of Assassins more important than us? No. We sang with you outside the UN to support them. Well, the UN, they're doing the right thing. So we say, yay, 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 UN. And now, here we are, outside of Livermore Labs. Is Livermore Labs more important than us? No. I hope they heard me. And you.
Again, I need your voice to fill in for my squeaky one. Okay, good. We're gonna sing one where you can really fill in for my squeaky voice. Hold on.
Oh, we do sing along. This one is a shout along. So we wrote this song back when we thought we already had the worst president ever. And at the time, there was a guy on TV. You might remember there was a guy on TV with a reality, quote-unquote, TV show, and at the end of every episode, he would wave his finger and say those two words. White House. Ugh.
For now.
I know, oh my God. So in this song, and he's in the White House, he's supposed to work for us. That means that we are his bosses. That means that if we want to, we get to wag our fingers and say, you're fired, to him and a few of his choice administration. It could be a very long song. But we'll just highlight a few of them. Okay. Yeah. If they can count the billions that loser says he's worth,
Why can't they count our votes?
if they can count the times that Breitbart denied Obama's U.S. birth,
Why can't they count our votes? We're not done. We're not tired.
we won't stop until Steve Bannon,
you're fired!
Yeah, why is he still there? If they can claim he won the fair election, fair and square, oh that's the word.
Why can't they count our votes?
Voter suppression and ID laws gave him much more than his share.
And why can't they count our votes? We're not done. We're not tired.
We won't stop until Mike Pence,
you're fired!
You know, I'd like to tell him that in person, but he can't be in a room alone with me. I'm so dangerous.
Where do we get these people?
Counting money, that one's easy. Corporate donations to his foundations. Conflicts of interest in the name of business. Scandals to the maxes. When are you gonna show your taxes? If you can count 140 characters in a tweet,
why can't you count our votes?
Her 3 million vote lead should have been your defeat.
Why can't you count our votes? We're not done. We're not tired.
We won't stop until Donald Trump,
you're fired! Why can't you count our votes? Whoa, whoa, why can't you count our votes?
I wanna know.
Why can't you count our votes? Yeah, yeah, why can't you count our votes?
We're gonna count
all the votes.
We're gonna
count all the votes.
We're gonna
count all the votes.
We're gonna
count all the votes.
Thanks so much, you're fired! That song is available for a free download on our website, MSRevolution.com, on the music page. We love you, thank you for your work, always! So, I want to bring us back in time to August 9th, 1945. You're going about your day. You're hugging a loved one. You're talking to your children. You're making love to your spouses together. And it drops. 1, 2, 3. I'll let you meditatively think about it. And then I'm going to do the siren. And those who choose may lay down in the road. And people will chalk you. And if you don't want to lay down in the road and want to help chalk people, you can do that. As I said, this is in recognition and remembrance. You've seen the pictures that after the bomb dropped, it vaporized people and left shadows, and you talk into the shadows. At some point, I'll say this again, at some point the laboratory will come out and ask and read the code and ask people to disperse. That is the point where you can make a choice whether you want to risk arrest or whether you want to come to the side here to the curb. So it is absolutely and positively part of the legal witness to do the die-in. So I'm going to give you a moment to think, to imagine yourself there.
Got kids out there.
This is Officer Rosa, police officer of the city of Livermore and a peace officer of the state of California. I hereby inform you that you are in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the state of California, I order you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean you are subject to arrest. This is Officer Rosas, police officer of the city of Livermore and a peace officer of the state of California. I hereby inform you that you are in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the state of California,
do that, you'll have a real job. When we get the cooperative commonwealth, we all produce food and clothing and things we need. We won't have to guard the capital.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else like some browsers? So you want to be with which gentleman again? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Dan.